And now we're going over to Lurgan, County Armagh, to talk with Paul Duffy about his brother, Colin Duffy, who's on trial right now in a diplomat court, charged with shooting 2 British soldiers. Paul, thanks very much for being with us.
Much appreciated for the invitation to come on to the show.
Oh, it's our privilege, always. Now, before we get into the trial itself, I want to get into a little background. This is not the first time Colin has been on trial in a diplomat court. He was previously even convicted and did time for killing RUC men, and it was only because of his solicitor, Rosemary Nelson, that he was ultimately cleared. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it's actually wrong to say that Colin was convicted. Colin was actually charged, and that happened in 1997. Colin was actually charged with the murders of 2 RUC men, and after 3 months, those charges were withdrawn. So he's never actually convicted in court at that stage. Rosemary Nelson would have been involved in that case. What I would do is to sort of give you a context of what has happened, is to take it back even further than that, to 1990, where Colin, along with 2 friends, and one friend was subsequently killed on the night by Loyalist Death Squad, and was strongly believed that there was a whole issue around collusion with the former RUC in that case. Now, there are recent developments in that, which the Marshall family, Sam Marshall, was killed on the night, and recent developments have shown that undercover British Army personnel, up to 12 members of them, were actually on the scene that night, witnessed the shooting, and did nothing whatsoever about it. Now, Colin was along with Sam when he was killed. He escaped the attack at that time. So, the family view Colin's present circumstances and all this context, that the British government have basically manufactured this case against Colin, and through the use of its agencies in MI5 and the PSNI. So if you go back to 1990, we had a clear attempt to assassinate Colin, which failed, and failed in respect to Colin, but his good friend Sam Marshall was actually killed in 1990. In 1993, Colin was arrested and charged with the murder of a UDR soldier, John Linus. Colin spent 3 years and 3 months in prison. He was actually convicted on that charge and then released on appeal when it was disclosed by a loyalist gunrunner, Lindsay Robb, that he was asked to provide, UVF and Mid-Ulster were asked to provide a clean witness in order to testify against Colin in the court. So once that revelation came open, Colin was then appealed his conviction, and he was released. And then the case you referred to is up to as far as 1997, when he was charged with the murder of 2 RUC men in Lurgan. Colin was held for 3 months. Rosemary Nelson, yes, you're correct, was a solicitor at that time, and Rosemary would have, she basically there was somewhere in the region of 12 independent witnesses who could put Colin in a different location at the time of the shooting. The RUC at that time chose to ignore those witnesses. Colin spent another further 3 months in prison before finally the charges were withdrawn. But it's a clear case here of what I would term a state persecution against Colin. For 2 decades now, they've been consistent in their approach to try and not only an attempt to assassinate him, but also to imprison him. And we see Colin's imprisonment and detention at this present time as being part and parcel to the British government and its state agencies and the use of those agencies, and then trying to get another conviction against him.
But Paul, would it be fair to say that as a result of all this, especially in the Lurgan area, Colin is target number one for what's now the PSNI, was the RUC, same thing, that they really hate him and would do almost anything to put him away?
Well, the hate's a strong word. I think it goes beyond that, and it goes into sort of what people, Republicans, Colin would be unashamed Republican. He has stood up for people in the past. He's not afraid to make his voice heard. He will always stand by his Republican principles. And what he has done is, in the lead up to Colin's arrest in this case, there was an incident actually in close to the town in Craigavon itself, where the PSNI came in heavy-handed into an area, went into people's homes, racked their doors, beat people with batons. Colin appeared on the scene along with a few other people, upwards to 40 or 50 people, and to challenge these people. Colin went on record to point out the brutality that was being inflicted upon the nationalist community in this area. And it's no coincidence that shortly after that Colin was arrested then, after the events at Maghaberry.
And he's being held in Maghaberry prison under just horrendous conditions. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, Maghaberry, people think back to Longcash when you refer to jails within the context of the north of Ireland. And, we all, I'd say most people, not just in this country but throughout the world, are aware of the jail struggle that went on, where Britain tried to criminalise Republican prisoners within Longcash. That backfired. Republican prisoners were steadfast in a commitment not to be criminalised. And what you have today in Maghaberry is a small, even though smaller in number, but a group of Republican prisoners who are steadfast in their commitment not to be criminalised by the British government within that jail. They've embarked upon a protest now, which is ongoing for almost 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years. Initially it was an Easter Sunday, that 2010, when the barricaded themselves into the canteen. The conditions that they were living in were just not acceptable to Republican prisoners. They were just basically trying to criminalise them, individualise them within that jail, treat them, like criminals. Republican prisoners throughout the history of the conflict in Ireland have always refused to be subjected to that sort of mentality, and they've stood up against it. It is the case that these current crop of prisoners within Maghaberry are doing the same. You have two major issues within Maghaberry. Those issues are strip searching of Republican prisoners, and I will actually go as far as to say it's not just a strip searching, it's forced strip searching and the brutality that goes along with it. Every day during this trial here, Colin is subjected to 2 forced strip searches. And what we're talking about here is rat-clad, what I would term screws. People would probably refer to the term wardens, dressed in full rat gear, shields. They basically attack the prisoner, put him on the ground, force him, drag him, strip him naked. And that's what's going on within Maghaberry prison. That has continued, for the last year and a half. These prisoners, have consistently argued their case and said that the technology exists within that jail to resolve the issue. In fact, as up until the 12th of August 2010, an agreement was reached between the prison administration, the NIO, and the current administration up in Stormont there through David Ford and the prisoners. And an agreement was reached which was to end all strip searches and implement a phased-in approach to the ending of control movement. That's the 2 issues in that jail affecting Republican prisoners. That was reached within that agreement. And what we have seen since, even 2 months after that agreement was reached, what we have is a clawback policy in place where strip searching continues and has continued up until today, where prisoners are being brutalised in that jail. As a family member, when you see, I seen Colin even in the lead up to his trial here at a preliminary inquiry, when he was subjected to constant forced strip searches. And, you can see the pain, you can see the agony, the way he was holding his arms, and, he was in obvious pain. But, one of the comment he actually made when I got a chance to speak to him at the time, and a comment he made stuck in my head, was, I don't care what they can do. They can do everything they want, in terms of my body's wrecked. He says, but my mind's still okay. And that would be the attitude of a lot of Republican prisoners within Maghaberry prison at the minute.
And Paul,
sorry, go ahead.
Paul, if people want to read more about this, I have an article on the strip searching that's posted on the Pensive Quill, Anthony McIntyre's blog.
Yes.
It was published yesterday, so you just got to scroll down. But it's really mind-boggling. It's horrible, and the prisoners are back on a no-wash protest. Literally, they're forcing their waste under the doors of the cell. It's just really back to Long Kesh.